So there's a technical issue a few people are texting me about.
Mhm.
Something about when they're clicking on watch now, it's going to the trailer
Huh.
on the website or something.
Oh, they probably there's they should have gotten an email that had the separate Zoom link for the Zoom session.
Yeah, a couple of people are texting me saying that they didn't get an email
Yeah,
after registering.
I know I got mine. It was, not long before the session started. Let's see. I'm going to pause to record. So again, welcome everyone to the weekly Dharma Gathering. My name's David Maynard, and tonight's session is going to be led by Aarti Tejuja, which is entitled Accepting Impermanence, How to Work with Fear and Grief in the Midst of a Rapidly Changing World. So Aarti will lead us through a guided meditation, Dharma talk, and we will close with a question and answer period and discussion. So tonight's session will be recorded. So if you would prefer not to be seen, please turn your camera off, which the control for that is down near the microphone at the bottom of your screen. And also, if you ask a question, you will be recorded as well. If you do have any questions during the guided instruction or the talk, please feel free to enter those into the chat box, which you can do by, excuse me, by clicking in the bottom of your screen, and you will see a button that says chat, which will open some sort of window on your device, and you can type a message to us in the chat box. And when we get to the Q&A section, we will go over those questions as well. And finally, the recording of tonight's gathering should be available within 48 hours on your weekly Dharma Gathering account on Vimeo, and you should receive an email when that is ready. So at this point, I'll go ahead and turn things over to Aarti, and please welcome.
Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in. It is quite the crazy time we're in right now. And I hope all of you are doing well and are staying safe and healthy in the midst of this pandemic that we're in. Yeah, it really is a pretty intense time. So tonight we will be starting off with a little bit of meditation, a little bit of guided instruction, and then we'll shift into tonight's talk, which is really centered around this idea of impermanence and specifically really relate that to what's going on right now in our world, which is this pandemic. So we'll do that, and then I will be talking for about 25, 30 minutes, and then we'll shift into a question and answer period, and I would really love to hear from you and just see where you're at and what's coming up for you in terms of both just in your life with this pandemic and how you think that this teaching can be applied. So that's a little bit about our format. Does anybody have questions before we get started? Okay, so let's start with a little bit of meditation. So just take our seats. So find a comfortable spot that you can sit in your chair. And you can either have your eyes open or closed, whatever you prefer, whatever feels good to you right now. Take a moment and feel what your body is feeling like right now. Feet on the floor, back, hands, resting on your thighs. Notice the air in the room, what it feels like against your skin. Anything that you hear in the space. Know that all those things are happening right now in this moment. And shift. Start to notice your breathing. Maybe you notice it more as the air comes in and out of your nose. Maybe you notice it more as the rise and fall of your belly or your chest. Wherever you notice your breathing, the moment, and feel that. Even though we may be sitting at home, either by ourselves or a few others that are in the house with us that we live in, and still stay connected. All share the present moment together. Shift our attention to our breathing. Notice each in breath we take as a new breath, out breath we take as a chance to let go of the moment. Time we breathe in, a new moment arises. Time we breathe out, let go. You may find that our minds are wandering. Maybe they're worried. Maybe your mind is thinking about something that happened 10 minutes ago or something that might happen in the future. Whenever you notice your mind has drifted away from this present moment, from this breath, gently allow yourself to come back to the breath, back to this body, back to the sounds in your ready, if you have your eyes closed, you can begin to open them and to allow some life to come back into your body. Coming back to each other. Technical world is so I wonder, there's not too many of us here, and so I know some of you are going to be listening on recording. But for the few of you that are here, I would really love to hear if we could just quickly just do a round of saying our names, where we're from, and what our pronouns are. So I can start. So my name is Aarti Tejuja, and I am coming to you from Chicago, and I use she and her pronouns.
All right, well, I'm going to go next. I will call people since there's not an obvious order.
Okay.
But I'm David, and I'm happy to be your host today. And I'm also going to take this opportunity to properly introduce Aarti, which I forgot to do thanks to our tech difficulties earlier. So I think it's helpful to know something about our teacher, although I'm sure that we will be wowed even if we didn't know this in advance. So Aarti Tejuja is a meditation teacher, contemplative art teacher, and a group facilitator skilled in holding space using the methods of art of hosting, interplay, and peace circles. Aarti is also a community organizer, youth mentor, and advocate for those impacted by the current justice system. Aarti worked for the Shambhala organization from 2007 through 2019 and currently co-owns a business, Joyful Ground, which helps organizations and groups spark creative energy and build authentic relationships using creativity, mindfulness, and other methodologies. Aarti has developed trainings for nonprofits, businesses, and youth in schools throughout Chicagoland and lives with her partner, Matt Lentz, and 3 cats, who I forgot to ask how to pronounce their names, but I'm going to guess, Mochi, Buttercup, and Fiona. So now, having properly done that, my apologies for forgetting earlier. I'm happy to be here with a chance to practice and to just be together and to learn more about how we can work with this very impermanent situation that we find ourselves in. So I'm going to have to guess people's names. So Anika, if you can unmute yourself.
Yep. My name's Anika Rahman. I'm in New York City. I'm very pleased to be here and grateful for this opportunity to meditate together. My pronouns are her, she, and her. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm probably going to get a lot of these wrong, but Mira, let's see,
Can you just unmute them?
I can,
Okay.
there we go.
Yeah.
I am Mira Tejuja. I'm Aarti's mom, and I'm really happy to be here. I know my daughter does stuff like that, but I've never got a chance to experience this, and I'm glad I did that today. I live in Crown Point, Indiana.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
The one that says my name is Ben.
Okay, Ben.
Yeah, I'm Aarti Tejuja as well. No, my name's Ben Derschlag. I'm from Chicago, and I go by him and his. And there was some technical difficulties, so somehow I got on Aarti's Zoom account. So
Thank you and welcome.
thanks.
And Kalyan,
Yeah, that's good. My name's Kalyan. I'm in Naarm, Melbourne, Australia. And my pronouns are he and him. And yeah, it's good to be here.
thank you. And let's see, we can't hear you, but Oni, can you unmute and
Yes, hi, this is Oni from New York City. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and happy to be here. Thank you.
thank you. And finally, Sheena.
Hi, I'm Sheena. I am located in Baltimore, Maryland. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am also happy to be here connecting with all of you. And I'm really excited to see your mom. That's so sweet.
That is wonderful.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Yeah, I don't see myself. There we go. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for that. I feel like in the COVID times, really, it's important for me to feel connected to whomever I'm speaking to in this Zoom format. So I appreciate being able to just see everyone's face and hear your voice. So thank you for that. So our topic today is really centered around impermanence. And I have been feeling very connected to this idea, this Buddhist idea of impermanence. So I just want to say a little bit about what impermanence means in the Buddhist context. So impermanence really means that things are constantly in flux, that things are always changing, that they're moving. And it's this idea that things are not fixed in time, but that they are always continuously changing. And so sometimes impermanence, people think of it as a complete ending, you know, like things are impermanent. But it's actually a cycle. I like to think of it as a cycle. So it's a little bit like things end, but then things begin. And so I think we can see examples of this, like to give an example of this in nature. So I have been doing a lot of gardening this month, and it's been really nice outside. And in particular, I've got some perennial, plants that come back every year growing in my garden. And one of the plants is a clematis. It's a flower plant. And just 3 days ago, my partner said to me, I don't know whether this is going to come back. It didn't have much on it. And then we noticed a little bit of green, like a leaf or something, kind of at the bottom. And I said, oh, look, there's some life here. So it looks like it might come back. And then there I was, like 2 days later, I was in the yard and I was looking at the clematis today. And not only was it kind of back, but it actually started flowering. And so, clematis in the fall died, and crumbled, and then just started arising out of the ground again, right? And so that's really what we mean by impermanence, is that things have a life cycle. They change, right? The flower died, the flower plant died, it arose again, right? In something new, in a new fashion. And it's not just in nature that we see that, but we see that with our things. So this week, another thing that happened to me was that my computer broke. So I'm actually using my partner's laptop right now because my computer broke. And that's because, you think that things are going to be around, but then they break. And then, a number of things could happen with my computer. Either maybe if it's fixable, it'll get fixed. Maybe if it's not fixable, it'll get sold for parts. Maybe somebody will take it apart and do something creative with it. But the computer itself even though it's no longer my computer, it maybe changes into something else, right? It never really dies. It just becomes something else. And that's the case too with people. So we see it in nature, we see it in things, but we see it in people. We are never the same. So we are always changing. We are always becoming something else. We are always flowing. So we're changing physically. I was looking at my hair today, and I haven't been doing anything with it because we're in quarantine, and all my grays are coming in here. And 10 years ago, I didn't have these grays, right? So physically, we are constantly changing, but also emotionally, we're always changing, right? Our emotions are never stagnant. From one moment to the next, we could be full of joy, and then the next moment we could be full of grief, and then the next moment we could be really angry, and that never stays the same. It's always moving, it's always changing. We don't stay in one permanent state of mind, right? It's always moving. So this idea of impermanence is really about change and flux, and that everything is always moving. And that impermanence is not an idea where it has a label of good or bad. Like impermanence is not bad or it's not good. It just is. Just things, if we just look at things, that's just the nature of how things work. So now I want to switch over to this idea of if there's impermanence, what's permanence? Well, we often live our lives as though they're permanent. So some examples of that, sometimes we think things will be around forever. Like I really thought my trusty old laptop would, kind of be around, and I was really disappointed when it broke. We think people will be around forever. We think we will be around forever. We think, well, I'll just repair that relationship over there. I have time, right? But in actuality, we never know when things are going to change or shift. And then the other way that we live in a permanent way is we identify with something like I'm a mother, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a business person, or I'm a student, right? And then that identity can become so permanent in our mind that we've just really fixed ourselves on those things. Like I'm a sister, right? And that identity becomes very solidified. Like I'm always going to be a sister, when that's not always necessarily the case, but we identify ourselves and become very identified with this I. And we carve out a whole identity for ourselves. I'm a this, I'm a that, whatever it is, it might be. And we live our lives like that. So even though we know, like we can see that things are not permanent, if we break them down, we don't often live like that. So shifting into change. Sometimes change is gradual, right? So sometimes impermanence shows up gradually. So maybe it's like you have a child and they're growing taller in height. And every year you see that they've grown, a few inches or an inch or, and it's just kind of happening gradually. Sometimes change is like that. It's not, it's slowly happens. But then you have change that happens not so gradually, right? And sometimes it happens very suddenly, like all of a sudden you have lost your job, or all of a sudden you have been diagnosed with a medical condition, or all of a sudden we are in the midst of COVID virus, right? Like we don't even see it coming. It's just all of a sudden our whole entire lives, all of a sudden we're in quarantine, and it almost feels like it happened overnight. It's so quick, the change. So I like to think of, you like to use the metaphor of the ocean to really feel this. So, when you're in the ocean has a lot of waves. Some waves are really small and they're not too big. And some waves can be really giant and have a lot of force. And so you could be in the ocean and you could be standing there in the midst of the ocean, And these small waves, which can just represent life's things, these small waves come your way and you can handle those, right? You can totally handle some of the small waves. You can continue to stand there. But then this ginormous wave comes, right? And what happens when this ginormous wave comes along in the ocean? It might just take you down. It might just take you with it, right? So it could knock you down. You don't even see it coming. Or the other thing that might happen is you decide to fight it. I refuse to accept this wave. I'm going to stand here and fight it. Right. And so when these waves, what I mean by big waves is big things that come along in our lives, like COVID virus, or it could be anything. COVID virus is having a lot of other impacts on our lives. Some people are losing their jobs, or have family members who've gotten sick, or a number of things. It's a way that is changing our lives, knocking us out of our routines is a big one. So this big wave has sort of come along. And, for some of us, it's knocking us over because it's just like, whoa. Or some of us might feel really angry right now. Like, I want to fight this. This is real. Another option, though, is that we really can choose to surf the waves. So interestingly enough, last year, I was in Mexico and in Zihuatanejo, and my partner really wanted to learn how to surf, and he decided to take surf lessons. And I wasn't going to do it, but I was like, well, I'm standing here, I might as well join in. So I got on the surfboard and I had to go out into the ocean and ride these waves, and I'd never done it before, and I just kept getting knocked off my board a number of times. And then finally what happens, and it's a very embodied feeling, but finally what happens is you get on the board and all of a sudden a wave comes and you're riding the wave. Like, you stand on the board and you find yourself just riding the wave, and it's like an exhilarating feeling. And you're like, I'm doing it, and you don't let the water doesn't knock you over. You're just standing there. But you're not stagnant. You're moving along with it. You just sort of become the wave. And that's kind of what it is, right? It's like we can choose to fight this. We can choose to pretend it's not happening, but it's happening. And so it's just happening. It's the thing that's happening. So it's like, can we learn how to accept what's here? Whatever it is, right? It could be really bad things, but it could be also really good things. It could be like you won the lottery. That could create a significant amount of change. And it's just learning to ride those waves no matter what they are, no matter what they are in our lives. So it's kind of like, I think of it as flowing. Can we flow? So some challenges, it's like, well, I always thought this COVID thing, I always thought I was going to have a job, or I always thought I was going to be free to go places. I always thought that I was going to get to be with others. I always thought that I could be at a social event. I always thought that I could attend a funeral and a wedding. And all of those norms that we think that are normal things in our life have been challenged in the midst of this, right? The change is really challenging us. So what are the things that can arise? Some of the things that can arise are grief, right? I know that I've been experiencing a lot of grief in the midst of COVID virus. And I think the grief is really coming from, and investigating this a lot, and the grief really seems to be coming from this mourning of, like, we thought all these things, right? I thought I was this person, and I thought I could be with others forever, and I thought that all these like freedoms that I had were going to be forever, but maybe that's not the case. So who am I now, right? What is my life and who am I? And so this just grieving of who I was, and I'm not sure I'm the same person. And then anger, You know, some folks might be having anger of just like, I don't accept this. Like, I do not resistance. Like, I am not going to accept this change, right? I have refused to accept it. I'm going to hang on to the old ways. Or some people might be experiencing joy. Like, I am so happy. I'm not happy that, you know, we have this virus, but I am so happy that maybe change can happen now. You know, I'm so happy that some people are telling me I'm so happy that people are going to wake up that, you know, what we were doing wasn't working. And then exhaustion, you know, maybe I can stop. I was just going and going and going, and now I'm being forced to stop, you know, and really think about my life. And then fear, you know, fear coming up. Well, if I'm not who I thought I was, if things aren't the way that I thought they were, then what is this world? Who am I in it? And what's going to happen? Right? We're sitting in a really big unknown period, which can bring up a lot of fear. And so from the Buddhist perspective, this idea of impermanence, which is always happening, right? It's just that this is a really big wave of change. What it said is that suffering is really going to arise if we cannot be with this kind of change, right? That's where the source of our suffering is. It's fighting against change, right? Change is going to happen whether we like it or not. It just is, because impermanence just is, right? You're not going to fight the flower from flowering in spring. It just is. It's ready to be born again. And so here we are in the midst of this, and this giant wave is hit, and here we are. This is where we are. And so we have to be with it. We have to be willing to be with whatever comes next. So in the Buddhist perspective, we have impermanence as such as that something is born, and then something dies, and then in between is what we call the bardo space. It's sort of the period between life and death. It's a period of deep uncertainty. So in the case of this, it's like the world that we have all known maybe for a long time is potentially dying. And we know we can bank on the fact that something else will happen at the end of this, right? Something new will arise. But right now we're sitting in this bardo state between death and birth, and it's just this empty space of uncertainty. It's this like, don't know what's going to happen, don't know what this is. It's a lot of unknown. Even the people that are supposed to be giving me the answers, the officials, you know, that are supposed to know things, doctors, all those people that we consider maybe experts of disease, they don't even really know, right? And so there's no answers, and we're sitting in this period of just deep uncertainty. And so the question remains, like, what do we do in that? And the Buddhist perspective is that we can really learn, if we can learn, take this time to practice just being with the uncertainty, not pushing the uncertainty away, but just being with it and being in acceptance of the uncertainty. If we can just remain and have a chance to practice in this, can we be present for whatever is arising right now in this moment, right? And this moment is always changing, right? So maybe that for you, like if you're in a quarantine situation with no people, that might mean a chance to be with yourself. It might mean a chance to be with your grief. It might mean a chance to be with your joy. It might mean a chance to be with whatever it is that you're feeling. You're with other people, it might be a chance to work on those relationships right now, or be with your children, or whatever it is that whatever situation you find yourself in. And some things are difficult, like maybe we lost our jobs, or maybe, you know, so how can we be with the pain that might be arising, or the really learning to be with, because COVID virus or not, the impermanence and change are always happening, and they're going to continue to happen even when we're out of this. Those things are going to continue to happen no matter what they are. So it's sort of being prepared to learn how to surf, right? We can't know when the next wave is coming, and we can't know what it's going to look like, but we can learn to be with. We can learn to surf, and so that's kind of that's what I've been contemplating in terms of impermanence. And for me, it's been a blessing. The Buddhist idea of impermanence really helps me personally to really sit with this. So I'm curious. I'm going to turn it over to you now. And I'm curious as to what questions are coming up for you. What is arising for you in the midst of all of this crazy uncertain time that we're in? So I'd love to hear from you.
So if anyone does have questions or comments, if you have video on, feel free to actually wave at us and you can unmute yourself. Or if you're not, if you don't have video, you will find also at the bottom of your Zoom window a raise hand button you can use that will virtually raise your hand so we can then call on you. You may have just answered everyone's questions, so you're done.
They don't even have to be questions. I'm just curious as to what you're sitting with.
Yeah.
Like you said,
Okay.
there's no questions.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, say?
No, I just felt like you were absolutely right. This is helping us to analyze certain things which we didn't have time to. I mean, there are sometimes we take things for granted. Like you said, we always think that we can do whatever we want. We can go to a wedding, or we can go to work or social, gatherings or whatever. But it has made us realize that if we can't go, it's not like the end of the world. That's how you feel. Like, it's not like, I don't know how to put it, but you explain very well. It's like a wave. You don't know when the wave is coming. And if you go along with the wave, then there's no fear. But if you're afraid of the wave, then you're scared. So with all this time in the world now we have, we can certainly sit down and analyze certain things which we didn't realize before. We took things for granted. Everything in life we took for granted, but it's not like that. That's how I felt.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Hi, this is Oni. I guess what I'm struggling a bit with is the privilege that it is for this time to be a pause. I have a very busy professional life, and so I'm working from home, and there are challenges with that, but overall I'm very fortunate and very well resourced, and I'm sort of struggling with being able to hold space for that. And then also, many of obviously the essential workers, a lot of folks who are, from more impoverished backgrounds and less sort of material resources at their disposal are continuing to really struggle at this time when I'm being able to reflect and take time to meditate and do things I wasn't able to do before. So I'm kind of grappling with that.
Yeah, I should say we're all having different experiences. So there are going to be some of us who have luxury maybe of having a lot of space right now. And then there are those of us who are on the front line or in situations that are not so privileged, that are not having such a great time in the midst of COVID virus and what that offers. So don't know if this is a good way of putting this or not, but I think the waves are going to be different for everybody, right? It's like, I think that's why I wanted to cover a range of emotions, right? Because all of this whole range of emotions is going to come up for everybody. But but you know, maybe if you're a frontline, I'm not a frontline worker, but if you're a frontline worker, for example, you may be experiencing completely different emotions than somebody who's able to sit at home and really be able to just have the luxury of really thinking about things right now. I know for me, for example, my experience with this, my partner had a melanoma removed from his neck a couple of weeks ago, and he had to go to the hospital and deal with cancer. And that is in the midst of COVID virus. So for me, so many people were talking about how they were feeling about COVID virus, and all I could think about was this situation of cancer. And I had turned into a full-time caretaker. So I didn't really have the luxury of really sitting down and actually thinking about how these big questions that a lot of people seem to be able to have, because I was just caretaking. And totally different emotions were coming up for me that I was sitting with. So I think those emotions are going to be different for a variety of people.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have any, is that answer? I don't even know if that's a real answer, but is there anything you want to follow up with?
No, I think, I appreciate your perspective, and I'll think it over more. But yeah, no, I appreciate the metaphor or analogy of the waves and different waves that people are dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're dealing with different waves at different times in our lives. It's not just related to COVID virus, right? It's like, you know, yeah, and some people are dealing with larger waves all the time. And that's important to say.
Right, very true.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
You can, yeah.
Yeah, I get the feeling sometimes I feel a bit pessimistic about the idea of learning from change, and sometimes it feels like that we go through all this stuff in life, and then when it's over, we just forget about it, and then wait for a next, like what you're talking about, the big change, and then the smaller changes we sort of rely on, the comforting idea of permanence or whatever. I don't know. It's just sort of obviously it's easier to think about impermanence at times like these, but somehow it's easy to forget about it as well, I guess. And sometimes I feel a bit pessimistic because things happen in life. You go through some sort of trauma, and then you go back to trying to forget about it all for a couple of years or something until the next thing happens. Or I don't know. Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, that is the human condition, right? We are constantly going back. So we could have this big giant wave happen in our lives, and we're like, I don't want to deal with that anymore. Like, I rode the wave, I'm good. Now I just want some permanence. So it doesn't always, we don't always learn from those big waves, right? It could be, I see a lot of people even in the midst of COVID virus like this, who are like, we got to get back to the way things were, right? Like, how do we get back to business as usual? It's not everybody that wants to see change happen, right? But it's this like, so, it's like, I think it's this constant practice. I don't think it's like one and done. Like, you have a big wave happen and that's it. And now you're good. You've got impermanence down. It's like a continuous process. And I think the meditation practice really helps with that too. So with the meditation practice, it really is like a birth and death happening over and over again, right? Each time you take a breath, it's a new moment. And each time you breathe out, it's the end of a moment, right? And we think of the present moment. I think sometimes you think the present moment is stagnant. Like, okay, here's the present moment, but now here's the present moment again. Now here, it's moving, right? It isn't it isn't like the present moment is stagnant. It's just always moving. But through the meditation practice, it's like it's a new moment and a new moment and a new moment and a new moment, and you're just staying with that change. You're going and you're flowing with it, and that's the practice. So it's like a constant practice, and impermanence is a constant practice, right? And we don't always learn from it, unfortunately. If it were that easy, then a lot of us would just be really awake. I wish it were that easy. Sometimes we need wave after wave or something to smack us until we realize it, until we see it. More thoughts?
Thank you. I guess you probably get more people interested in meditation during the big waves, hey?
During the big waves, yeah, that's exactly true. It really is true. I've noticed that people are much more interested in, yeah, during hardship. Like I used to work at the Shambhala Meditation Center, and people would come in, and when I noticed like when people would come in, you'd ask them like, "What brings you here?" And almost 9 times out of 10, a big wave had hit them. You know, something difficult had come about in their lives, and so they were searching and seeking something. So yeah, definitely, it's true. Direct correlation, I think. More thoughts?
Yeah. Hi, it's Ben again. It's interesting that you say that. Like, I'm just fascinated by the fact that you use the ocean and wave metaphor. I think it really speaks to change and what we're going through. And, you know, as you were talking, it hit me that like one time I was taking a meditation class, and we were contemplating, you know, what is happiness? And like for some reason, like this image of like me when I was in college, not surfing, I never learned how to surf, but like me and my friends were like playing in the ocean, and it was like late at night, and like we like figured out this thing of like just like being able to let the waves like take us over. And like I just remember this feeling of just like going with like this flow of the wave, like being like horizontal with the like my head underneath the water, and just like kind of like feeling a sense of buoyancy and having the wave just take me, and how cool that felt. And it wasn't like really big waves, and like the just like fluidity through flux just came to my mind, you know, just being fluid through change. And it's kind of hitting me. I'm like, I never really understood where that came from, but I remember having a conversation with my friend around that time, and maybe I'm making this up, but maybe it's true. Like, I think it might have happened before I had that image, where he was just like kind of comparing the situation I was going through. I was healing from it. I was kind of on the other side of it, but like, you know, I was still kind of getting upset by something that was happening about it. And he's like, yeah, man, he's like, maybe it's kind of like, you know, you're not like getting splashed by big waves, but like these little waves are coming up and hitting you in the face still. And he used that like metaphor. And, you know, maybe that's kind of what led to my image of contemplation, contemplating happiness. So that's something that resonated with me. And I've never really thought fully, like I've thought about like each breath is like a revolutionary moment. I think Janet told me that one time. But like the thought of like breathing in a new moment and letting go of that moment, it helps, you know. I can relate to that. Like when I'm in my meditation practice, kind of flowing with the moment, you know, you can really feel that. Just this readiness for like life to unfold in front of you. And it might be a sound or it might be a shadow, but you do notice it, you know, the change. So, and I think the last thing that resonated with me was like, you know, as you know, like I'm supposed to be getting married in June, right? And like Aarti's actually who's going to be our justice of the peace for the wedding. And I was like, you know, first I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity. You know, it's, you know, we can kind of study some of the material she gave us and like that sort of thing, which we haven't done yet. So side note, but we'll get to it. But, you know, I think it's like, yeah, we're having like a hard time kind of coming to a point where we could talk about, like, all right, are we gonna have to start postponing it? I think we're getting closer to that talk, so it's like a little challenging. So I think it's like waiting on the moment for that, like, you know, like for the timing to be right when we're having those conversations, and like, you know, so I think that's just kind of another thing that requires it. And when you talked about a funeral, like not knowing if I can't go to someone's wedding or a funeral, like the funeral seemed more painful to me, not being able to go to someone's funeral than my fiance and I not having a wedding. Like that to me seems like, okay, well, I know we're going to be connected. But like if someone who passes away, who I really love, and I can't go to their funeral, that would really be a challenging reality to sit with. So I guess I'll kind of end it on a dark note there.
Thank you, Ben.
Yeah.
Something about what you said made me think, you know, we don't actually have to wait for the big wave to hit to sit with change. Like change is happening all the time, even though it's more obvious, you know, when a big thing happens. We really get this like front view seat of change, but of impermanence. But we don't have to wait for it. We can see it all the time. You know, we can take a walk through nature and see it. We can see it in the mundane. We don't even have to take a walk. We can just see it around us. Like we can see it in ourselves, you know. So it's always there. That it's just what I love about Dharma is that it's not about good or bad. It's just truth. It's just this is it. You know, it's happening. It's you just witness it. You know, and it's happening all the time. So if we can practice even during times that are not stressful and pandemic like, you know, we can practice anytime.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said there too kind of like makes me think a little bit about, I think what Oni was just talking about, like, which is like, yeah, we're going through this stressful time as a collective, you know, people living on this planet. And yet we're, you know, some of us are sitting here with some privilege and some comfort. And yeah, that there's like a feeling of guilt there, right? And what you just said kind of seems as like something that can ground me moving forward, of like that this is just me preparing for whatever is to come with this, because who knows where it's going to turn. You know, maybe it's preparing me for an opportunity to help serve communities or professionals who need the support, you know. So those are just some things I'm thinking about right now too.
Yeah, thank you. Lots of unknowns. We don't know. Don't know where this is going to lead us. I will say, speaking of those who are not in a privileged situation right now, you know, there's plenty of people that don't have a roof over their heads, for example. You know, I know somebody who's actually in a shelter. And, you know, there's that situation. But I think what it's doing is that those situations, those what is actually happening and the way those situations have arisen have been there up till now. It's like this is just highlighting it, right? We can really see like all of a sudden when I read something like in California or on the West Coast, all of a sudden this homeless issue that has been going on for years and years now, all of a sudden they found roofs for people, you know, like all of a sudden we're like jumping in there. So it's just interesting.
Like that Saturday Night Live skit where like all the white people were so shocked that Trump got elected, and Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock were like, what are you guys so surprised about? Like, this has been going on forever.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Ben. Any other thoughts or questions? We're almost at close, I think.
We're getting there. The conversation reminded me of something else I had heard, which relates again to the privilege and the circumstances, which was it was basically people were commenting, it's like, I might die alone. I might be alone in my bed dying. And then the response to that was, at least you have a comfortable bed to die in. and think about where, you know, they don't have that luxury of being able to die in a comfortable bed. So, and that's always it's a Aarti says it's always there. It's just not something we think of.
Yeah, things are really highlighted right now. You know, it's like the world is showing us a mirror of what we have created.
Does anyone else have comments? Questions?
Last minute telling. Well, thank you all for being here tonight and sharing in this time together. And for those of you who are on the recording, thank you for listening in, and hope that this has been helpful in some way, or at least left you contemplating more about this idea of impermanence.
Yes, thank you everyone for coming and joining us on today's online Dharma gathering. So I invite you to come back next week when our teacher will be Lama Justin van Oosthuizen, whose talk will be on wrathful mothers and COVID-19, tantric Buddhism for these times. So also, let me, while I'm reading the rest of this, I will put the link to actually register for that class into the chat window if anyone wants to rush over there. And which I've covered up my other window. And also, if you would like, we encourage you to consider becoming a subscriber to the weekly Dharma gathering. We do have a 7-day free trial. If you'd like to try that out, you can look around at all the archives of the past talks, which is certainly a treasure. And also be sure to follow the weekly Dharma gathering on Instagram at Weekly Dharma or on Facebook at Weekly Dharma Gathering.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting.
Thank you, and thank you for teaching.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Thank you,
night.
everyone. Good night.
Stay safe, everyone.